All right, you said it, Martin. A shocker. Because all the reporters, all the pundits, myself included, I imagine you, we all thought James Harden was going to opt out of his deal, sign a long-term contract with the Philadelphia 76ers, and that would be that. But in a shocker, instead, he is not opting out, so he's staying in this contract for one more year, about $35 million. But under the premise that he and the Sixers are going to work on a trade where presumably he will go to another team and they will sign him to a long-term deal. And the reports, Martin, are that though the team's interested. There's two out there. Maybe there are a few more. Maybe a few more will surface. But the ones being named are the Clippers and the Knicks. So that's the scenario. Now, we're going to talk later in the show, and you saw the rundown. Third hour, we're going to get to what this looks like for James Harden, what we think of James Harden doing this. So let's just look at the basketball aspect of it, where you think he might go, what it means for Philadelphia and all that.
I think what it means for Philadelphia is it's a clear delineation. Obviously, Embiid was the MVP there. He's the star there. But the idea that we sat back and you heard a little bit with Doc, and you heard it, like some of the friction between James Harden and Doc Rivers, not necessarily together, but, in their post-game, post-season comments, like after their season was ended and their exit interviews, didn't necessarily sound like they both were the biggest fans of one another in terms of the way they were trying to go about winning basketball games. But people rarely are opting in to good situations. Like, even just look at Draymond Green in Golden State. He's opting out with every intention pretty much to re-sign there. Right. Russell Westbrook, a few years ago, there was no question he was going to opt into his $47 million for the Lakers because that was about it in terms of the 40 that getting that level of payday, right? So when I see this James Harden wants to be traded, what does it mean for Philly? I think congratulations, because you can move on from a guy who has not performed in the postseason consistently, had some of his best postseason games this most recent run, and before then has historically flamed out, and you can now
still flamed out this year too.
Exactly. So but the flame roared a little bit brighter before he flamed out here, and this time I think you can now is going to just see more of a Tyrese Maxey ball dominant, and I think that's a good thing for Philly. And with a player in terms of Harden's salary, when you get into the new CBA, I think they could fetch, if not a good player back for him, some assets to build for the future in terms of, you see it now with teams renting out their cap space.
They do need to win now, though.
Sure.
Like, I don't see them going all totally young as far as, we got to get a ton of picks. Obviously, teams want picks for assets. But Joel Embiid, number one, is right smack dab in the middle of his prime. And you know this, Martin, he's next. And by next, I mean he's that next dude that's going to start getting criticized because he hadn't won a ring. He hadn't even got to the finals. Heck, he hadn't even gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals. And people were killing Nikola Jokic. Oh, you got 2 MVPs. Where's your ring? You haven't even been to the finals, dude. Well, it's coming for Embiid. So it's about winning now for Philadelphia. Now, the two teams out there, at least that are being mentioned at this point, Clippers and the Knicks. First of all, the Knicks, stop it. Knicks, if I'm the Knicks and I call the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm asking about Joel Embiid, not James Harden. What in the world does James Harden do for the Knicks? Why in the world would they want James Harden? Because if I'm Philly, I'm like, well, who you giving me Jalen Brunson? I need a point guard now. Why do you think that Knicks have any use for James Harden?
No.
What is it?
Especially when you're off of the most feel-good season you've had in New York. And, since the bang bong, Trae Young knocked him out in the first round. And before that, it's been like 20 years, right? So, and you have Jalen Brunson on this deal. If I'm Philly, if I'm Daryl Morey, and somebody calls me with that, I'm racing to the bank. Like,
right.
how do
I'll take Jalen.
Yeah, give me Jalen Brunson, a playoff performer, a guy, even though he's limited in size and stature, plays much bigger. Exactly, and he's a true floor general leader type of player.
Yep.
Give me that every day, every night. I know he's going to be there. I know he's going to show up. Whereas James Harden, again, he could be a disappearing act. I don't see any draw for the New York Knicks to go after James Harden, especially when you consider, Chris, just the final point, the coaching situation in New York. What is James Harden going to do there?
With Tom Thibodeau.
With Tom Thibodeau.
Because he's not exactly putting forth the most effort on the defensive end. And, if they wanted Julius Randle and, I don't know, by himself or, more pieces with him, I mean, what Harden and Jalen Brunson together, that's not doing anything for you. And at least with this team, as you said, the Knicks played, they were solid in the postseason. They're clearly not ready to contend, but at least they're still fairly young.
Right.
James Harden would not make them any better. Nobody would move them up in the East because obviously they'd be giving up something to get him. And yet he's older. So now your future is not quite as bright as it is now. As far as the Clippers, that I think that's the team, and I think there's already been talks. I think that, and I don't, Brian Windhorst from ESPN is reporting that the Clippers are looking like they're going to try to get a big three of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden. Harden, I know, we all know about his postseason problems. But if I'm the Clippers and they want the big three, look, the Clippers have stuff that I'll take if I'm Philadelphia outside of their 2 stars. I'll take Terrence Mann. I'll take Norman Powell. You already have Tyrese. So you think about Tyrese Maxey. I'm not saying this would necessarily be the exact starting 5, but Tyrese Maxey, Terrence Mann, Norman Powell, who maybe would come off the bench, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. You don't have that true second star unless Maxey morphs into that. But that's not a bad team, and your depth probably improves. And the key, what I'm looking for now, if I'm Philly, is I'm saying, you know what? Are these dudes going to bring it every night? Are they going to defend? Are they going to play hard? And will they at least be who they are in the playoffs? And you won't find that out until you get there. But, Denver, Jamal Murray now is viewed as a second star. But he wasn't. Going into this season, right, you kind of were like, well, they got 1.5 stars.
I don't know. I got to push back there because here, like the last 2 years, I was told Jokic was winning the MVP because he had no help. And if Jamal Murray was there, this team would be the best in the West or one of the best in the West. And Chris,
but Murray wasn't viewed as, he wasn't a full star. I mean, he never made an all-star team. He was viewed as a good player.
He was never an all-star. He hadn't been an all-star yet, but we had seen him have multiple playoff games where he was going off. And I get it was the bubble, and depending on where you sit on that, you may devalue the bubble, but there was still proof of evidence that Jamal Murray in postseason games was an effective player.
Right. And I think Maxey, I don't know that he could be that good. I'm not saying that, but he looks like he can be very good. And, Mann's got some upside too.
I think so too.
That could be the deal. We'll get back more into that.